Everybody's been jamming in the back to the amazing music here. It's really fantastic to be here. Somehow this microphone makes me sound even more Australian. But we'll do what we can. If you have trouble understanding me, I'll just really ham out the Australian accent. But it's great to be here, and I want to basically arm you guys today. You've heard these amazing stories of change at the local level, all over the world. My job today is to arm you with tools that you can go away with as you walk out of this conference to be better activists, to make better social change, and to talk about the new ways in which you can really just incredibly quickly scale up your efforts using technology but not relying on technology, as we'll talk about. So this is what I do now. I run this organization called Purpose. You can all find it on the internet at purpose.com. We're a home for movement building. We look for gaps around issues that need large-scale movements of people. Where there's a people power deficit on issues like global gay rights, corruption at the city level, global income inequality, and we try to create organizations and initiatives that fill those gaps. And we work with other groups to help them use this new lens. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do in a sec, but first I want to tell you about how I got there and the journey that I'm on, and I think what implications it has for what you guys are doing. So this is me as a kid, and as you'll see, I was very, very precocious and determined to change the world.
Today we spoke to Jeremy Heimans at his Sydney home.
Well, I think we have got problems, and I think we have got monetary problems. What you could do is divert 10% of each nation's annual military spending to services of debt, the environment, and, health, malnutrition, children, and all these problems, because we spend an excessive amount, an enormous amount on the military, which is completely unnecessary to spend so much, and instead we've got to spend that money on immediate problems that endanger our entire society.
So the good news is that at least I wasn't like one of those annoying young Republican type figures. I had good politics back then, I have good politics now, so that's good news. This was my journey as a kid, and when I was a kid, this was the tool that I had, the facts. So I remember in the first Gulf War on the eve of the first Gulf War in 1991, I tried to organize this big global facts campaign. So where James Baker and Tariq Aziz were meeting on the eve of the Gulf War to try to stop the Gulf War, and we thought that if we could just get enough faxes to the hotel that they were at, we might be able to fix it. Now, as you can imagine, fax is a fairly limited tool in terms of the ability to there's a certain throttle effect in the fax, but nonetheless, those were the tools that I had now. So here's the good news. The stuff that I was able to do as a kid, as a child activist, now a child like Bia, who's from Rio in Brazil, can do so much more effectively. So Bia is 11, about the same age that I was when I was doing some of this crazy stuff. And she went to a school in Rio that served disadvantaged kids. It was one of the best schools in Rio, actually. But it was about to be demolished. It was about to be bulldozed to make way for an Olympic changing room. So as you know, there's a ton of development happening right now in Rio, and there's just a big economic imperative to pump billions of dollars into the city, and if it means you have to evict a few favelas or bulldoze a few schools, then so be it. So My Rio, which is one of the organizations that Purpose incubated, is a citizens-based anti-corruption movement in Brazil that gives ordinary citizens, particularly those who've never had access to power, the tools to really fight back. So Bia used the platform that we created, which was called Pressure Cooker. My Portuguese pronunciation is pretty bad. And she started a campaign on our platform, which was designed to attract attention to this problem, which was a school was about to be bulldozed. So we saw the traction that this campaign was getting online through the platform, so we decided to do this. We decided to build a website that basically created a live web stream of the school at all times. And we invited the citizens of Rio to monitor this website because we knew that the demolition of the school would be occurring within about a week, and sign up with their mobile phone numbers to become text message guardians of the school. So the deal was you leave your mobile phone number, you monitor the site, and as soon as someone sees evidence that bulldozers have arrived, you'll get a text. And the text will say, immediately come to the school, form a human barrier, protect the school. So that was the deal. This is the sort of stuff I could never have dreamed of doing back in the day. So we did this, and of course, when we announced this campaign, and when thousands of people started signing up to become text guardians of the school, the mayor of Rio was like, yeesh, maybe I shouldn't close the school. So the mayor agrees to keep the school open and agrees to a participatory process for future school closings. So this is just a small example, and this was the happy victory. You've got to have a shareable Facebook graphic to depict your happy victory. So this was the happy victory that we declared. And the point about these little victories is it's not just about saving one school. It's about creating an iconic story about school closings and all of the evictions that are happening around the city of Rio that can inspire other people, that can send a warning to those in power, that can really drive change. And that's what's been happening. So just to sort of change the age group a little bit, it's not just kids who are making this big change. This man here, his name is Anna Hazare. Most of you probably haven't heard of him, but he's a famous Gandhian anti-corruption activist in India. And he uses these very traditional activist techniques like hunger strikes in order to get his point across. But when Hazare was running a major national anti-corruption campaign in India in 2011, he decided to start playing around with technology. So the first thing he does is he says, if you support my corruption campaign, send me a text message. And there was a short code, and about 70,000 people did this, and that was kind of good. But then he changed his strategy. He realized that in India, which is true also in many other parts of the developing world, there's this cultural phenomenon in mobile culture called the missed call. Does anyone know what a missed call is? Really, see? We need to spend more time in India. So missed calls are basically where, in order to avoid a phone charge, you just call someone and hang up and send a message. So if I'm running late for meeting you at the cafe, I leave you a missed call and I hang up. Or if we're dating and I just want to tell you that I miss you, I leave you a missed call and you know that I miss you. So it's this whole thing in mobile culture. It's totally ubiquitous. It's worse than breaking up with someone by text, right? So Hazare says, leave me a missed call if you support my campaign against corruption. Anyone want to guess how many missed calls he got? You got to shout out a number. 5 million, 10 million, 7 million. All right, he got 35 million. 35 million people left him a missed call. Can you believe that? So this is big stuff, right? Because these are not, the people who are leaving these missed calls are not people sitting around with their iPads like us. They're not people who are plugged in and connected to all the latest technologies. These are people on first-generation mobile phones being empowered and sending a message. So for the tech geeks out there, what Anna Hazare got after receiving these 35 million missed calls was the world's largest CSV file. So some geeky people will joke at that, will laugh at that. But basically, he got this huge spreadsheet of phone numbers, which he could geolocate because of the way mobile phone numbers are structured in India. But he didn't have the tools to turn that into a long-term movement. So he hacked it together. Even with that, he was able to get hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets in Delhi because he recontacted the people on that 35 million person list who were in Delhi. So what we did at Purpose with some other partners was build this really cool thing called CrowdRing, which is a tool to enable you to make a missed calls campaign in any country from anywhere. So if you're an activist, you can go and you're in Kenya, as I'll show you in a minute, we'll give you a number that you can use for your campaign, and we've created a back end so you can actually reach out to those people, you can text them, you can find ways of re-engaging them and turning that into a movement. So we did this in Kenya recently when we were running a campaign around tax justice, which was basically a campaign around a tax on maize and other basic goods that was going to disproportionately impact the poor. We put up these posters around Nairobi in a pilot, and people just started, stickers, stuff they could do. And so it's this live laboratory for the intersection between technology and offline. So people are going, and garbage collectors actually started going door to door in Nairobi, explaining why this tax was bad, and then saying, leave a missed call if you want to join the effort. And in just a week, we got 90,000 people to do this little missed call in this small-scale pilot in Kenya. So this just shows what's happening. What's happening in the big picture is that billions of people around the world are getting empowered in new ways. It's not just people, in privileged parts of the world like this. And that's a big deal for the way development happens, for the way democracy develops in these countries. So we're seeing this big change that you're a part of, that everyone here is a part of, which is that people are sensing their own power. Those of us who've grown up with these new tools, you expect to participate. You expect to shape every aspect of your lives. You're not just there passively consuming stuff. You're making stuff. You're sharing stuff. You're part of economies that are transforming the world. So purpose is about that change. It's about creating new models that enable that. And it's ultimately about addressing this kind of major power asymmetry, which is the asymmetry in, as you'll see, the multinational corporations represented by the boob. This asymmetry between the world's people and these powerful entities. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the LGBT activism that we do to hopefully inspire you. And the context for that activism is that while it's really great that we're winning the gay rights struggle in places like the US, while it's really great that people like me can now get married in New York, which is awesome, let's enjoy that. That's great. Really great. The problem is that people like Roger, not only can Roger not get married, Roger goes to jail for just sending a text message in Cameroon that says, I am very much in love with you. So, Roger develops this relationship with someone that he believes is a guy that likes him, and he sends this text message, and the person he's texting is actually a police officer who is entrapping him. And Roger is sent to jail for 3 years for sending that text message. The bigger picture here is that the struggle around LGBT rights is much bigger than getting guys like me married in New York. In fact, if you really have a sense of solidarity, a sense of an understanding of how suffering is distributed, this is where the suffering is. Imagine growing up gay in Cameroon or in Iran or in fact many, many parts of the world. And All Out is a global movement that is about building people power to address these problems head on. So we launched this campaign for Roger, and as you'll see, we organize people all over the world around this at a critical time in his trial to try to stall the legal proceedings against him. In Iraq, we launched a campaign to save a group of gay men or men who were thought to be gay from essentially being killed. So in Iraq, 800 gay men have been murdered since the Iraq War, often with the blind eye or the active cooperation of the state, just because they're gay or they dress emo. So guys who look a little emo, maybe their bangs are a little long, these guys are actually being targeted brutally by the state. So these men that you see in this photograph were one of 20 gay men that we'd identified it all out. The problem is that the traditional philanthropic sector couldn't move fast enough to actually help these guys get out, and they were in imminent danger. So All Out launched a crowdfunding campaign, and they said, right, we have 24 hours to use crowdfunding to get these guys, working with our partner on the ground, evacuated out of Iraq. And we were successful at getting a bunch of these guys out of Iraq into safe places, which is amazing. So that's the power of this new model. A foundation, unfortunately, was going to take months and months and months to consider the application, and we could use people power, this aggregated force of 1.8 million people, to do something much more quickly that others couldn't. Right now, we're in the middle of an epic struggle that you guys no doubt are following against Russia's anti-gay laws. And we have this incredible opportunity because, as we know, the Winter Olympics are being held in Russia in March, and it's a moment to really tell the story to the world about about gay rights and what's happening. And so we've organized hundreds of thousands of people around the world. We recently held simultaneous rallies in 34 cities around the world. So again, anyone who tells you that this online activism stuff is just, clicktivism or slacktivism, that's just wrong. If you do it well, and if you're smart about it, what you're really doing is you're getting people involved, and then you're turning them from online activists into offline activists. And that's the real work, is how to move people up this curve of engagement. And so right now we're in a big fight with Coca-Cola, trying to get them to speak out against these laws. So what does all this mean for you? I'm going to share with you a few lessons before we go. The first lesson is it's not about you. These are our friends and not so friends from the 20th century. What all of these people have in common is that they're sort of charismatic leaders. The movements they led were very personality-driven. They were very much based on the cult of personality around these people. So the good thing is that in the 21st century, the best movements are actually leaderful, not based on these charismatic leaders. There are many leaders, and ordinary people are not making themselves the story. The problem is that if you try to make yourself the charismatic leader, then you end up like, Lance Armstrong, or you end up like any of these great leaders who do these things and then somehow they have a moment of fall and then everybody loses faith and the movement has been hinged on that one person. So this is the shift that you guys need to make in your own activism if you're not already thinking in those terms. You also have to move up this pyramid. One of the big problems for the Green movement, in my view, is that it's stuck as an issue and it hasn't necessarily moved up to be a worldview. In our experience, the most powerful organizing organizes people not around a specific issue, but around a whole worldview. That's what we're trying to do with a group like Avaaz, which is like a global progressive movement that really connects people across many issues, but that all share a set of values that actually integrate really quite coherently. Gay rights movements tend to trying to organize people around an identity or a sense of identity politics, and they're more powerful. So think about how you can organize people as according to their worldview, not just according to their identity. We also are talking to people about how to shift from the era of sound bites to the era of meme drops. So a sound bite is, that perfectly constructed message that everybody does in the organization, and the job is you repeat the message and you hope that people take it up. That doesn't really work that way anymore, right? Because people these days actually want to take your ideas, they want to remix them, they want to change them, they want to alter them, they want to own them. And that's what we call a meme drop. And Occupy was a great meme drop, right? There was a set of language, a set of imagery, 99% Occupy, that people could change, they could own for themselves, they could occupy all sorts of crazy stuff, and it kind of built a movement and created a lot of energy. It wasn't enough ultimately to consolidate that energy, which is another conversation, but the idea of the meme drop is the way you propagate ideas today. But memes aren't enough. It's not enough to have the YouTube hit, as cool as that is. You need to turn that into political power. This is an example of a YouTube hit that we're involved with making, the group GetUp that I started in Australia made. But I'm going to show the YouTube hit to you, and then we're going to talk about how we turn that into power. So that video, which always gives me goosebumps, was the #1 video in the world for a little while on YouTube. I guess Keisha was having a week off. But I don't know, is it Kesha? Anyway, but here's the cool thing. So it's great to have a YouTube hit, and millions of people saw that, and we hope that we move people in the moment that they were watching that video. But that ultimately isn't enough. What you really need to do is turn that into power. So the reason we made that video back in Australia was that the governing Labor Party at the time was about to vote on whether to include gay marriage in the party platform. And we knew we needed to create a wave of pressure on the politicians and the officials who were about to make that vote. So we put that video out there. It got a huge amount of energy. We crowdfunded to just blanket the airwaves in Australia with that ad in the lead up to the vote. And in a very close vote, the vote was won. So you know, you can do this stuff. I mean, this was just sheer creativity and grit and not a lot of money, but a lot of impact. So be thinking about the long-term power. This is just a very simple framework to think about how you should go about your activism. Start by making it easy. There's no prizes for turning your activism into an exclusive club that only the bravest and most valiant can do. You've got to allow people to move up this curve, make it easy for them to join, don't make it feel like you have to already be fully committed in order to be part of it, and then create ways to turn people from, you know, people who've just dipped their toe in to people who become committed activists who give money, who get on the streets, who organize in their own communities. But you've got to move people up that curve. You know, and finally, I would urge you to think about the ways you can take your own work and make it both transnational and hyperlocal. This is the cool stuff now that you can do. You can hold an event in, you know, Siberia that someone in, you know, that someone in Sweden can be looking at and be appreciating and understanding the common humanity that connects those people. And so on issues like the struggle for LGBT rights, but on many other issues, think about how to find people in that place where they want to find solidarity around the world, the transnational solidarity, but also ground what you do in the local. So I wish you all the very best of luck. You guys are an inspiring group. This is an inspiring event. And I hope you go out into the world and do stuff that was even more bratty than what I did when I was 12. Thanks so much.